The Ten Commandments stand as one of the most powerful codes of ethics, not only shaping ancient Israel but also leaving a profound mark on cultures, faiths, and moral beliefs worldwide. When God handed these laws to Moses on Mount Sinai, it was not just a set of rules but a divine message filled with purpose, holiness, and guidance for humanity. The setting itself, thunder, lightning, and the voice of God, speaks to the immense significance of these commandments. They address core values such as loyalty, justice, respect, and integrity, guiding us in both our relationship with God and our interactions with others. This article dives deeply into each commandment, unraveling the spiritual and moral wisdom that makes these teachings timeless and universal. Whether you're looking to deepen your faith or simply understand the roots of ethical behavior, exploring the Ten Commandments can offer insight into a life of meaning, balance, and purpose. If you're inspired by this journey through the Ten Commandments, don't forget to subscribe. Let's keep exploring faith and wisdom together. Receiving the Commandments at Mount Sinai. The event of receiving the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai stands as one of the most defining moments in biblical history. Moses, the chosen leader of Israel, ascended Mount Sinai to meet with God, representing an entire nation awaiting divine instruction. The mountain was shrouded in thick clouds, lightning, and thunder, symbolizing God's powerful presence. This awe-inspiring scene, recorded in the book of Exodus, speaks to the reverence and fear that this holy encounter instilled. It was an extraordinary event that would not only shape the course of Israel's future, but also serve as a cornerstone for Judeo-Christian ethics and morals for centuries to come. Mount Sinai, also known as Horeb, had already been a sacred location for Moses. It was there that he first encountered God in the burning bush. Now, as he stood on its heights once again, he was about to receive the Ten Commandments directly from God. This time, however, it was not a personal revelation, but rather a message intended for all of Israel and beyond. God's descent on the mountain, marked by the sound of a loud trumpet, was both a warning and a signal to the people of the gravity of what was to come. Each thunder and flash of lightning emphasized that this was no ordinary communication. It was the voice of the Creator imparting divine laws. As Moses ascended, the people of Israel waited at the base of the mountain with a mixture of anticipation and fear. They had witnessed God's miracles before, particularly during the Exodus, but now they saw His holiness in a new and tangible form. Exodus 19 describes the people standing at a distance, trembling. They knew that approaching the mountain uninvited could mean death, a testament to the sacredness of the moment. God's laws, therefore, were not only ethical rules but sacred instructions, meant to be followed with the utmost respect. The Ten Commandments were not just legal prescriptions but also a covenant between God and His people. In this setting of thunder and lightning, God was declaring His moral expectations to Moses, who was His chosen mediator. Through these laws, He was solidifying His unique relationship with Israel. This was no ordinary pact. It was a divine covenant that would require obedience, trust, and faithfulness from the Israelites. In return, they would be blessed as God's chosen people, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, as stated in Exodus 19 verse 6. Each of the Ten Commandments addressed foundational elements of human and spiritual relationships. They were simple yet profound, covering aspects of worship, community, and individual conduct. As Moses stood before God, he understood that these laws would guide Israel's moral compass. They would serve as a visible and timeless sign of God's expectations for a holy life, even amid the moral challenges of the ancient world. The commandments would be engraved on tablets of stone, symbolizing their permanence and the unchangeable nature of God's law. The giving of the commandments was not only a revelation but also a moment of profound instruction. It was a message that true freedom and community could only thrive under the rule of divine law. Unlike the laws of Egypt, where the Israelites had been enslaved, these commandments were rooted in justice, compassion, and respect for human dignity. God was establishing a nation that would reflect His character and values. The law was a divine gift that aimed to transform the Israelites into a community that valued life, honesty, integrity, and reverence for the sacred. Witnessing the power and holiness of God at Sinai, the people learned that following Him required both awe and commitment. They realized that the Creator they served was both transcendent and near, powerful yet compassionate. His voice was overwhelming, yet His words were intended for their good. The commandments, delivered in such an extraordinary way, were not meant to be seen as burdens but as blessings. Through these laws, God was guiding His people toward a life of moral excellence and harmony. The experience at Mount Sinai taught Israel that they could not rely solely on ritual practices or sacrifices to please God. They needed to embody the principles of the commandments in their daily lives. This event called them to a higher standard, one that reflected God's character and holiness. By following these commandments, the Israelites were to stand as a beacon of morality and justice in a world filled with idolatry and corruption. Their distinctness would be their strength, their identity, and their testimony. Through the thunder and lightning, God's message was clear. Israel's calling was not to be taken lightly. They were chosen to be an example of ethical and spiritual integrity. This required not only outward obedience but inner transformation. By living out the 10 Commandments, the Israelites were to show the surrounding nations the nature of a God-centered life. They were to be set apart, different from the other nations, yet also a light to them, as God's ultimate plan was to reveal His ways to the entire world. In the end, the events at Mount Sinai underscored the seriousness of Israel's covenant with God. The thunder and lightning signified the gravity of the commandments, while the presence of Moses highlighted the role of intercession and leadership. This moment was the foundation for Israel's identity and the root of many of the values still celebrated in Judaism and Christianity today. The mountain experience was unforgettable and served as a perpetual reminder of Israel's unique relationship with God and their duty to uphold His laws. Finally, the receiving of the commandments set a precedent for divine human interaction in Scripture. God's voice, delivering a clear and authoritative law, reinforced the idea that His instructions were not arbitrary but deeply purposeful. Moses, as Israel's mediator, had the responsibility to bring these laws to the people, while the people themselves had the responsibility to obey. Through this process, God was not only forming a nation but shaping their hearts and minds according to His will. Context and significance of the commandments. The 10 Commandments hold a foundational place within the biblical narrative, representing more than just rules. They are divine principles that encapsulate God's expectations for His people. Set within the context of Israel's liberation from slavery, these commandments are a testament to the relationship between God and His chosen nation. The commandments, which were given immediately after Israel's exodus from Egypt, symbolize a transition from oppression to a life governed by divine laws. They were a call to moral and spiritual responsibility, intended to guide Israel in building a society based on justice, respect, and reverence for God. At their core, the commandments reveal the nature of God Himself. They reflect His holiness, justice, and compassion, inviting those who follow Him to emulate these qualities in their own lives. By adhering to these laws, the Israelites would not only obey God but also cultivate a community that mirrored His character. In other words, the commandments were an expression of God's will for humanity, a blueprint for a life aligned with divine values. This alignment would allow the people to experience a closer relationship with God, rooted in trust and obedience. These commandments also served as a unique identifier for Israel among the nations. Other societies had legal codes, but the 10 Commandments were different in their source and purpose. Given directly by God, they were intended to set Israel apart as a people chosen to represent His ways. Unlike human laws, which often reflected the ambitions of kings or rulers, the commandments revealed God's heart for humanity and His vision of a just society. This distinction gave Israel a profound responsibility to live out these values, displaying God's ways to the world around them. The commandments are not merely legal requirements, they are relational. The first 4 commandments, often seen as the vertical commandments, concern humanity's relationship with God. These focus on worship, reverence, and honor toward the Creator. They stress the importance of loyalty and devotion, calling the people to reject idolatry and to keep the Sabbath, a sign of their special covenant with God. These commandments emphasize that true worship involves both action and heart, encouraging an inner devotion that aligns with outward obedience. The remaining 6 commandments, the horizontal commandments, focus on interpersonal relationships. They address issues like honoring parents, respecting life, and upholding truth. These commandments guide the Israelites in their interactions with others, promoting respect, fairness, and kindness. Through these laws, God instructed His people to value family, life, and community. They serve as reminders that spiritual devotion is incomplete without moral integrity in human relationships. By living according to these standards, the Israelites would become a model community, a reflection of God's love and justice. The significance of the commandments extends beyond Israel's borders. Though initially given to a specific group, these laws contain principles that are universally relevant. Concepts like honoring one's parents, telling the truth, and respecting life resonate across cultures and eras. In this way, the commandments transcend their original context, offering guidance for all of humanity. This universality underscores their importance, demonstrating that the values they promote are rooted in God's design for human relationships and society at large. These commandments also highlight the balance between love and law in the biblical tradition. While they are legal in nature, they are based on love for God and love for neighbor. Jesus later summarizes the commandments in these terms: love the Lord your God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself, Matthew 22 verses 37 to 39. This perspective reveals that the commandments are not rigid rules but are deeply relational. They are guidelines that foster healthy relationships, both with God and others, thus promoting true spiritual and moral harmony. Furthermore, the commandments established a covenantal bond between God and Israel. This covenant was more than an agreement. It was a solemn commitment to live in a way that honored God. The commandments were written on tablets of stone, signifying their permanence and importance. This covenant marked Israel as God's chosen people, tasked with upholding His laws and reflecting His character to the world. This sense of responsibility added weight to the commandments, as they were not just personal obligations but national commitments to embody God's standards. Historically, the commandments became central to Israel's identity. They were taught, memorized, and passed down through generations, ensuring that each new generation would understand its role in this sacred covenant. The commandments were embedded in the cultural, legal, and religious life of Israel, influencing every aspect of their society. This dedication to the commandments ensured that their values endured, shaping the moral framework of Israel and inspiring other societies to consider the ethical depth within the biblical tradition. The context and significance of the Ten Commandments also underscore God's desire for a transformed heart. The laws were not just about behavior but about fostering a deep, inner respect for God and others. By internalizing these commandments, the Israelites could cultivate a genuine love for God and a sincere compassion for their fellow beings. In following these laws, they would experience the blessings of a life lived in accordance with divine principles, leading to a deeper spiritual connection and a more harmonious society. The Ten Commandments, therefore, represent a unique blend of law, love, and relationship. They are timeless truths meant to shape character and community. While their initial context was ancient Israel, their principles continue to resonate, reminding us of the importance of integrity, respect, and devotion in every generation. The commandments invite all who seek God to live in a way that honors both Him and others, embodying a life that reflects the divine values established on Mount Sinai. The commandments and their essential values. The Ten Commandments encompass essential values that establish the foundation of moral integrity, spirituality, and respect within a community. Each commandment reflects a distinct yet interconnected principle that addresses how individuals should relate to God and to each other. These values begin with a call for monotheism and loyalty, as the first commandment states, "You shall have no other gods before me," Exodus 20 verse 3. This principle highlights the exclusive devotion that God expects, reinforcing the belief that He is the one true God deserving of complete allegiance. This value of loyalty is the basis for a faith that does not waver, even in the face of societal pressure or cultural diversity. Following the first commandment is the prohibition against idolatry, which goes beyond mere worship of statues or images. It speaks to the human tendency to place material or personal desires above spiritual priorities. By forbidding idols, God encourages His people to avoid anything that distracts from genuine worship and relationship with Him. This principle speaks to the importance of purity in faith, urging believers to examine their lives for anything that may take precedence over God. In today's world, this could mean resisting the idolization of wealth, status, or technology, which often takes the place of true spiritual focus. The third commandment, which warns against taking the name of the Lord in vain, instills the value of reverence. This commandment teaches that God's name is sacred and should not be used lightly or disrespectfully. Reverence for God's name means recognizing the holiness of His character, His authority, and His presence in one's life. This extends beyond language and also encompasses actions and attitudes, reminding believers that every aspect of their lives should honor God's name. In a society where casual speech and disrespect can diminish the value of holy things, this commandment encourages an attitude of continual respect. Observing the Sabbath, as commanded in the fourth commandment, highlights the values of rest and reflection. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy, Exodus 20 verse 8, is not merely an instruction for physical rest but an invitation to reconnect with God. This weekly pause allows believers to refocus on spiritual priorities and refresh their relationship with their Creator. In modern life, where constant activity and productivity are often glorified, the Sabbath reminds people of the importance of balance, encouraging them to prioritize their spiritual health. This commandment serves as a vital reminder that rest is both a gift and a responsibility. Honoring one's parents, as stated in the fifth commandment, underlines the value of family and respect for authority. By instructing individuals to honor your father and your mother, Exodus 20 verse 12, God reinforces the importance of family as the foundation of society. This commandment is a call to respect those who nurture, guide, and support one's growth. Honoring parents fosters a culture of respect that extends beyond the family, promoting harmony and stability within the community. In a broader sense, it reminds society of the value of honoring tradition, heritage, and the wisdom passed down from previous generations. The sixth commandment, "You shall not murder," Exodus 20 verse 13, affirms the sanctity of life. This commandment emphasizes the value of human life, highlighting that each person is created in the image of God and deserves respect and protection. The prohibition against murder is not only a legal boundary but a moral one, meant to cultivate respect for others' lives. This commandment calls believers to uphold peace and resist violence, both physically and verbally. In respecting life, individuals learn to value every human being as part of God's creation, fostering a sense of responsibility and compassion for others. The commandment against adultery addresses the value of fidelity and trust in relationships. By instructing people to not commit adultery, Exodus 20 verse 14, God promotes integrity and commitment within marriage and by extension, all relationships. This commandment reinforces the importance of trust, loyalty, and honor between partners, which are crucial for building a stable and loving family unit. In a broader sense, it encourages people to respect the boundaries of others, fostering relationships rooted in honesty and faithfulness. Fidelity in relationships strengthens families, and by extension, society as a whole. The prohibition against theft, "You shall not steal," Exodus 20 verse 15, upholds the value of honesty and respect for others' possessions. This commandment encourages individuals to live with integrity, respecting both the rights and property of others. It addresses not only the physical act of stealing but also dishonest behavior in general, including deceit and exploitation. By promoting respect for others' belongings, this commandment fosters a sense of justice and fairness within the community. It serves as a reminder that true satisfaction comes not from acquiring more, but from living honestly and ethically. Bearing false witness against one's neighbor, forbidden in the ninth commandment, is a reminder of the value of truth. "You shall not give false testimony," Exodus 20 verse 16, emphasizes the importance of honesty in relationships and in the community. This commandment discourages slander, lies, and deceit, which can harm reputations and break trust. By valuing truthfulness, individuals strengthen the bonds of community, creating a culture of transparency and trust. This principle serves as a call to speak and act in ways that build others up, rather than tearing them down with dishonesty. Finally, the commandment against covetousness teaches contentment and gratitude. "You shall not covet," Exodus 20 verse 17, addresses the dangers of envy and greed, urging individuals to be satisfied with what they have. Coveting leads to dissatisfaction and can destroy relationships through jealousy or resentment. This commandment encourages believers to appreciate their blessings and trust in God's provision. Contentment fosters inner peace and gratitude, qualities that strengthen both individual character and communal harmony. By resisting covetousness, people learn to celebrate each other's successes and live with a spirit of thankfulness. Breaking the covenant and the renewal of the tablets. The breaking of the covenant, symbolized by Moses shattering the original tablets, is a powerful moment in the story of Israel's relationship with God. When Moses descended Mount Sinai carrying the first set of tablets, he discovered that the Israelites had constructed a golden calf and were engaging in idol worship. This act of idolatry was a direct violation of the newly received commandments and represented a profound betrayal of their covenant with God. In anger and sorrow, Moses threw down the tablets, breaking them into pieces, an action that illustrated the broken trust between God and his people. The golden calf incident serves as a sobering reminder of humanity's tendency to stray from God's path. Even though the Israelites had just witnessed God's power and heard his voice from the mountain, they quickly reverted to old habits and cultural influences from Egypt. This episode highlights the challenges of faithfulness, showing how easily people can turn to tangible idols when they feel uncertain or abandoned. The golden calf was more than a statue. It represented a deeper spiritual rebellion and a desire to take control in uncertain circumstances. Moses' intercession for the people is a testament to his dedication as a leader. Despite the people's transgressions, Moses pleaded with God on their behalf, asking for mercy rather than judgment. This intercession reflects the importance of mediation in the relationship between God and humanity. Moses, acting as the mediator, stood in the gap for Israel, seeking to restore the broken covenant. This role foreshadows the concept of intercession in later biblical teachings, where leaders and prophets often pray on behalf of the people, appealing to God's compassion and forgiveness. God's response to Moses' prayer is both just and merciful. Although he expressed anger and disappointment, he ultimately chose not to destroy the people. Instead, he gave Moses instructions to carve new tablets, symbolizing his willingness to renew the covenant. This act of mercy demonstrates that while God's holiness demands justice, his love seeks restoration. The renewal of the tablets signifies God's commitment to his people, even when they fall short. It emphasizes that while God takes sin seriously, he is always willing to offer a path back to grace. The act of renewing the tablets holds deep theological significance. By providing a second set of tablets, God showed that his covenant was intended to endure, despite human failure. This renewal was not merely a replacement of stone, but a re-establishment of the relationship between God and Israel. The new tablets were a reminder that God's promises and expectations remain unaltered, but that his mercy allows for new beginnings. This act teaches that repentance and restoration are always possible, even after significant mistakes. The broken and renewed tablets also serve as a metaphor for spiritual growth through repentance. When the Israelites saw the new tablets, they would remember their failure and God's forgiveness. This memory was meant to inspire humility and a deeper commitment to God's laws. Just as broken relationships can heal and even strengthen over time, so too could Israel's relationship with God grow from this experience. The new tablets became a symbol of both God's standards and his compassion, reminding the people that his expectations for holiness were paired with an invitation to redemption. The renewed tablets symbolized a fresh start, but they also came with a renewed sense of responsibility. The Israelites were reminded that while God is forgiving, obedience remains central to their relationship with him. This lesson reinforced the gravity of the commandments and the consequences of disobedience. It emphasized that while God's mercy is vast, his standards are unchanging. The people were encouraged to learn from their mistakes and to approach the commandments with a renewed sense of reverence and commitment. The breaking and renewal of the tablets also speaks to the theme of covenant loyalty in the face of human frailty. The Israelites' failure at Sinai reflects humanity's ongoing struggle to remain faithful to God. Yet, God's response demonstrates his patient love and his desire to guide his people back to him. This cycle of failure, repentance, and renewal is seen throughout the Bible and serves as a reminder of God's steadfast love. It shows that while humans may falter, God remains constant, ready to welcome them back into his covenant. This moment in Israel's history became a turning point in their understanding of God's character. Through the renewal of the tablets, the people learned that God's justice is balanced by his mercy. They were reminded that their relationship with God was not transactional but deeply personal. This realization invited them to view the commandments not as strict rules but as expressions of God's desire for a holy and loving community. It encouraged them to see obedience as a response to God's love, not merely an obligation. In the end, the renewal of the covenant set the stage for Israel's journey towards spiritual maturity. They had been given a second chance, but this time with a greater understanding of the importance of loyalty to God. The new tablets were both a reminder of their past failures and a sign of God's hope for their future. As they carried these tablets through the wilderness, they carried a symbol of forgiveness, a call to faithfulness, and a vision of the holy nation they were meant to become. Monotheism and loyalty to God in the commandments. The commandment to worship only God establishes monotheism as the cornerstone of Israel's faith and identity. "You shall have no other gods before me," Exodus 20 verse 3, is both a call to exclusive loyalty and a profound declaration about God's unique nature. In a world where polytheistic beliefs were common, this commandment set Israel apart as a people dedicated to the worship of one true God. This command was not merely a prohibition against other gods, but an invitation to a relationship marked by fidelity and unwavering commitment, laying a foundation for the monotheistic beliefs that remain central to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This emphasis on monotheism also teaches the value of loyalty in worship. Worshipping only God requires a steadfast devotion that goes beyond outward rituals and enters into the heart. God's command for exclusive worship asks his people to set aside any idols or false deities, recognizing that true loyalty means putting God above all else. In practice, this means choosing God's ways even when they conflict with personal desires or cultural pressures. It is a reminder that loyalty to God should guide every aspect of life, from decisions and actions to beliefs and values. The prohibition against idolatry complements the commandment for monotheism by rejecting physical representations of the divine. You shall not make for yourself a carved image. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. Exodus 20 verses 4-5 highlights that God cannot be confined to physical forms or objects. This prohibition protects the sanctity and mystery of God, preventing humanity from diminishing his divine nature through material representations. By avoiding idolatry, believers are called to relate to God in a way that respects his transcendence, acknowledging that he is beyond human comprehension. Idolatry, as described in the commandments, goes beyond the worship of statues or images. It encompasses anything that takes God's rightful place in one's heart and mind. In the ancient world, idols were symbols of power, wealth, or fertility, representing the desires people often prioritized over spiritual devotion. Today, idolatry can manifest in modern forms, such as an excessive focus on money, success, or fame. This commandment challenges believers to examine their lives for anything that competes with God's place, reinforcing the principle that loyalty to God requires the renouncement of all other gods. The loyalty commanded by God requires more than obedience. It demands a relationship built on love and trust. By asking for exclusive worship, God establishes a covenant based not only on rules but also on mutual commitment. Loyalty to God involves both the mind and heart, where actions reflect a deep-seated reverence and love for him. The prophet Hosea later describes Israel's relationship with God as a marriage, where faithfulness is crucial to the covenant. This metaphor emphasizes that God's command for loyalty is relational, inviting people to love him as deeply as he loves them. Monotheism also teaches a distinct understanding of morality. If God is one, then moral standards are not relative but absolute, grounded in his character. This understanding provides a stable foundation for ethical living, as God's commandments reflect unchanging principles. Loyalty to God's monotheistic values challenges believers to follow his standards consistently, even when societal values shift. By committing to the moral absolutes that God represents, believers anchor their lives in an ethical framework that transcends time and culture, promoting a life of integrity and righteousness. This commandment to serve only God also promotes a sense of inner freedom. By serving one true God, believers are liberated from the pressures of competing loyalties or shifting cultural expectations. When God is central, life's priorities become clearer, and decisions align with divine purpose. The security found in loyalty to one God fosters a peace that comes from knowing one's purpose is grounded in a relationship with the Creator. This divine focus provides stability, helping individuals resist the distractions and pressures that often pull them away from spiritual fulfillment. Furthermore, monotheism instills a sense of unity among believers. When worship is directed solely toward God, it unites people in a shared purpose and identity. The commandment to serve only one God binds the community together, creating a cohesive spiritual identity. This unity was especially important for Israel as they entered foreign lands, where diverse beliefs could threaten their collective faith. Loyalty to one God allowed Israel to maintain a distinct identity, shaping their culture, laws, and way of life in ways that would sustain them through generations. The call to monotheism also reminds believers of God's ultimate authority. By acknowledging only one true God, individuals submit to his rule above all earthly powers. This loyalty empowers people to live with integrity and courage, as they know their allegiance lies with a power greater than any human authority. Throughout history, this principle of loyalty to God has inspired believers to stand firm in the face of persecution, as they hold to their commitment to him above all else. This faithfulness reflects a profound trust that God alone is worthy of worship and reverence. Lastly, monotheism offers a vision of hope and purpose. By calling for exclusive worship, God presents himself as the ultimate source of meaning and fulfillment. Believers are reminded that life's greatest purpose is found in knowing and serving God. This loyalty promises a relationship filled with spiritual depth, wisdom, and guidance. As believers choose God over worldly idols, they experience the richness of a life lived in harmony with the Creator, discovering that true satisfaction comes from a singular devotion to the one who made them. Reflecting on the Ten Commandments reminds us that these laws are more than ancient texts. They are living principles that can guide us toward a life of integrity, kindness, and faith. Imagine a world where loyalty, honesty, respect, and compassion are practiced daily. This is the vision embedded in each commandment. Now, the real question is, how will you bring these values into your life? Whether through small acts of kindness, deeper reflection, or a commitment to spiritual growth, applying these teachings can transform not only your life but also your community. So, take that step today, and let these commandments be your compass toward a more fulfilling and harmonious life. And don't forget, stay connected to continue learning and growing in your journey of faith. Ready to dive deeper? Subscribe to stay connected and explore more insights into faith, spirituality, and moral values.